let's begin. Let's call this meeting to order. Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Hi. Welcome to the storm day. We got it. If this, thankfully for COVID, we would have had to cancel this meeting probably, but due to COVID, we still got the meeting going, so that's a good thing. And I was almost close to even wearing my mask, but then I realized I don't need to. So let's begin the declaration of conflict of interest. Does anyone have any conflicts here to discuss about?
No conflict here, and I noticed Margaret just joined us, so I think we're good.
Okay. What do you have? What was that? No, there's no conflict? Is that what you meant?
No conflict, right?
Okay, perfect. Next is the approval for the minutes for last time.
I would move approval of the minutes of the January meeting.
Okay,
I'll second them.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll second them.
Okay. So that's good. And okay, approval of the agenda.
Yep. So, Mr. Chair, as I mentioned, I'm just hoping to add one item, housekeeping item at the beginning of the agenda before we get started.
Sure. Please add it now. Okay. And what was that issue?
Okay, so I'm just kind of reading off some notes here. I just got it. So all of the advisory councils, like the task force and the food council and seniors advisory, are all they're all sort of like underneath the council advisory committee, which is made up of a few members of city council. So they were the ones that approved our terms of reference and etc. So they had a meeting the end of January, and they're wanting for all the committees to elect a minute taker, which would basically take over the role of to create the minutes for the meetings. So they would be responsible for preparing the minutes according to a template and protocol established by city staff. So at this point, they're asking all advisory boards to elect a minute taker. What that would mean then is that we would be giving a template to fill out the minutes, but that we would be doing our own minutes from the meeting. So how we do that is really up to this committee. If you want it to cycle around and everybody takes a turn, or if you want to have one person that takes on that role, we can have a discussion about that. But they do want somebody to be elected and take over that role as of this meeting.
Okay. Do we want to just get that over with now? And does anybody feel that they would be a good candidate for doing that? I've had experience in Toastmasters taking the minutes, and I find it kind of challenging. So if it would be a challenge for me. I know that it can be quite. You got to be quick. Does anyone else have any ideas for who to do it?
I was just going to say, Ramona, do you want us to start tonight taking our own minutes? Is that the plan?
Yes, that's what they've asked, if it's possible. I mean, the other thing that will happen is there's always the YouTube video. So even if someone's taking the minutes tonight, note-taking tonight, you do have the option of going back and rewatching the YouTube video if there's sections that you want clarification on. But yes, they're hoping to have somebody that would start that tonight.
Because you can always record it as well and listen to it later.
I think the idea of taking turns out of it appeals to me, but is there somebody that'd like to volunteer to do it every meeting? Okay, I'll volunteer to do one meeting. I don't care if it's tonight or next meeting. Would that be okay? And somebody else can volunteer next time? What do you think of that idea?
I would second your self-nomination.
So if I got tonight or next week or next month?
Well, why don't we start you off on tonight, see how you do, and we'll consider you for a permanent position.
Oh, all right, let's go for tonight.
Okay.
Yeah, it's hard to record it other than the YouTube page. So the fact that we can rely back to the YouTube page is good too. So you don't necessarily have to do it if you're discussing something. You don't necessarily have to be writing the notes all down, because you could do it the day after with the YouTube video. So that's a plus as well. So it doesn't have to be right direct. That encourages anyone to want to do it as well.
I would say too, I mean, my own personal take on it would be, because especially during the era of video meetings, documenting everything that every person says, I think, is less important, because we have the document of the video. So I think if we just record decisions and, you know, action items, things that are tabled, that would be, as far as I'd be concerned, that'd be fine.
Yes, totally.
Agree.
Okay. Okay. So any other comments on this decision?
No.
Okay. Well,
Thank you, Joanne.
You're welcome.
Joanne's our minute taker for the night. Okay.
Yep.
So
It'll
after
keep
that,
me quiet.
okay. And next, moving on, discussion with Brian Guptill, the Island Trails Confederation Trail.
Maybe I will introduce Bryson, if that's okay with you, Mr. Chair, and Bryson.
Sounds good to me.
Okay. I've known Bryson for many years professionally originally, and then most recently, you know, for the last decade or so, through two threads, I guess. One is his involvement with Island Trails, which is the island-wide trail organization that I'm sure he'll tell us more about. And then the other is Bryson's interest in mapping trails through a system called OpenStreetMap, which I think I may have demonstrated to the task force at an earlier meeting. Suffice to say, it's kind of a Wikipedia-style map of the world, and works very well when you want to document things like trails. So Bryson's done a lot of work documenting island trails. He's also walked the Camino and written a book about the Camino, and he's also I guess, co-conspirator of a new walk on the island called the Island Walk, which he might touch on as well, which, among other things, goes through Charlottetown. So I had asked or suggested, I guess, that Bryson come and speak to us, both because of experience with island trails, and we obviously have trails that go through the city, the Confederation Trail, which obviously goes through the city, and I guess seeking perhaps some historical insight from Bryson. Now you've got me calling him Brian, right? Seeking him some historical insight from Bryson about the sharing of the use of the Confederation Trail from the bypass out to Winslow with the PEI Snowmobile Association, depending on the season, and just what the history of that is, and how he and perhaps Island Trails might see that evolving from here. So I will pass things over to you, Bryson.
Thanks, Peter, and thanks to everyone for having chat with you this evening. As Peter mentioned, had a role in Island Trails for more than 10 years. Since I acquired a dog needed a lot of walk. It seemed a lot of walking. It seemed a natural fit for me to start walking on trails, and now, as Peter mentioned, I've kind of evolved into being the guru who's interested in Island Trails maps. So if you go to our website, islandtrails.ca/status, you will see about 50 trails that are listed on the island, and we're adding trails that link all the time. So we're an active not-for-profit. We have a very engaged board of directors.
Bryson, I'm sorry to interrupt, but do you have an option of being able to turn up your mic volume a little bit? Is anyone else having trouble hearing Bryson? I just want to make sure for the recording that we can hear what you have to say.
My mic is fully up, but I may have been muting it with my thumb. So I'll
You may
try
want
again.
to also try turning off your video, Bryson, just because your audio is also cutting in and out a little, and that might be helped by turning
Okay.
off your video.
I'll do that. I know my my bandwidth isn't what perhaps some of you have down here by the water. It's pretty slow. In any event, how's that? Is it coming across a little better?
A little better.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So yes, and as Peter said, Peter and I go back a long way. We did a project together when I first moved to the island in 1995, which was to go to Toronto and try to get some people to move their high-speed internet connections to Prince Edward Island. We were way ahead of our time and didn't get a whole lot of takers at that stage, but look where we are now. We met with the Premier last week on another issue, and he volunteered that that bandwidth and internet connection is maybe one of the most important issues in terms of its future. And that was his idea. We didn't suggest it to him. So kind of interesting. Let me give you a little bit of a history in terms of snowmobile use and where Island Trails has historically stood on the issue of snowmobile use on the Confederation Trail. I'm a board member of Island Trails now, but I'm no longer the president, so I can't speak on behalf of the board. But I can tell you that over the years, we've had a lot of discussions about the Confederation Trail and who uses it. It's significant to me, and I think very important to note that PEI has something very unique in the Confederation Trail. Not only does it go tip to tip, but it covers all the spur lines, or virtually all the spur lines of what was the Canadian National Rail Line, Prince Edward Island. It's 450 kilometers of trail now, and the trail is largely non-motorized. And that's a fairly unique situation in Canada, but it makes PEI an extremely popular destination for people who want to walk or cycle on the Confederation Trail without any danger of being run over by motorized vehicles. So that's something that Island Trails has lobbied for since before creation of the Confederation Trail. We were the organization back in 1989 when CN announced they were abandoning the rail line. We formed a Rails to Trails group, and that evolved into Island Trails. And since that time, we've been lobbying for non-motorized use of the Confederation Trail with quite a bit of success. And we've also managed to attract a fair amount of funding, not just from government agencies, but from the private sector. And I think it's significant for you to think about this, that in 2014, we received a grant of $1.4 million from Garfield Weston Foundation for improvements on the Confederation Trail. And it was the wish of the Garfield Weston Foundation that these funds go to a trail on the East Coast that was guaranteed to be non-motorized into perpetuity. And they swallowed hard and accepted that in the winter, snowmobiles were on the trail, but for the rest of the time, there were no ATVs or motorcycles or other gas-powered devices on the trail. So I think that's an important distinction, and one that we can be proud of in terms of what we do here on Prince Edward Island. Any questions about that so far?
Bryson, was the arrangement to have wintertime use by snowmobiles part of the original conception of the Confederation Trail when, on launch, so to speak, or was it something that came along at a later date?
From the best I can determine, it came along at a later date, and the date was around 1990. which was about around 1995. Sorry, so that was about the time that that PEI's Rails to Trails organization changed to officially be called Island Trails. And I understand from some of the people that were involved at that stage that it was considered a compromise. Farmers were very concerned that these new motorized snowmobiles were running over a lot of their fields and damaging fields. And so there was some desire to give them some access to trails. And most people were not using the Confederation Trail in the winter. So this was considered a compromise. It has been a compromise, a large compromise ever since. And as time goes on, I think the compromise has significant problems. And I'll tell you my own personal view at this stage is that in the future, the Confederation Trail being used by snowmobiles is an accident waiting to happen. There are approximately 150 people killed on snowmobiles every year in Canada. And PEI often has fatalities, usually average about one person killed a year on driving snowmobiles on the trail. And so it's a safety issue. But so far, the people that have been killed have been people that have been riding snowmobiles. The big risk is a snowmobile which travels at the posted limit of 80 kilometers an hour. It's the breaking speed limit. The risk is a snowmobile hitting someone who doesn't know that the Confederation Trail is exclusively for snowmobiles from December the 1st to March 31st. That's the big risk.
Bryson, within the city limits, that section that starts at the bypass and leaves the city and then re-enters the city in Winslow, is that, and maybe Ramona, you know the answer to this, but and then the rest of the trail that comes down into the core, who is that owned by? The province, the city, Island Trails, somebody else?
Well, that's a very good question. I looked up the agreement that the Snowmobile Association has with the government, the PEI government. They do have a 10-year lease. The last one was signed in 2016, so it continues to 2026. And that lease describes every parcel of land that they cover, so it's rather extensive. But it's interesting that one of the staff who works for the province told me that the lease does not extend from Royalty Junction down to the bypass. So that portion of the trail is not covered by the lease. That portion of the trail is covered, in fact, by an agreement with the city of Charlottetown. And I've even been told that the leased portion also doesn't extend to between Royalty Junction and Winslow. So it appears that by convention, the Snowmobile Association has been given access to that piece of the trail purely through policy decision that I understand from some of the scuttlebutt that I heard comes primarily from Mitch Tweel lobbying on behalf of the Snowmobile Association.
I can add a little of what I guess I know to that. So I'm in a conversation, actually, Nancy and I and her team with CBCUL, who's doing our engineering and design on the bypass highway project. So we're talking about the section that runs up to the Mount Edward Road and bypass highway intersection. There's a section that runs along there, and we wanted to attach our trail from going on the Brackley Point Road to Mount Edward Road. It would take, the last little section would just be on the Confederation Trail. So I sent some information to her because I was looking for understanding about where they have a lease to. So what she said is in 1996, the city established the agreement with the Snowmobile Association, and that would go from the city limits, like Royalty Junction, to Mount Edward Road. So they can use that section of the trail, is my understanding. But it doesn't, in the agreement, doesn't specifically talk about sole use of the trails. It's like a shared space. So, I mean, my understanding is the trail is the province's, but then we have, obviously, we have a strange agreement on that section where snowmobile use is permitted.
And Brenton, as far as I know, there is no, when you, if you're walking out of town past Canadian Tire, you get to Mount Edward Road, there's no signage that says go no further because snowmobiles will be encountered. Is that correct?
That's correct. And
Okay.
again, according to the lease, the leasee is responsible for any signage. So that signage theoretically would be erected by the province. So the province is responsible for the signage, or the city perhaps, on that portion that's inside the city limits. And that would be would have to be clarified. I mean, I can tell you that I did an interview for the French CBC network a week or so ago on this very question. And as it turned out, the day we were there was late January, and there was no snow on the Confederation Trail. I pointed out to the CBC that in spite of the fact there's no snow on the trail, snowmobiles can't use the trail, that they have an agreement that says they have exclusive use, and so no one else is allowed on the trail. So there was a lot of people walking and cycling south of the bypass, at least 20 people that I saw the day I was out, and yet north of the bypass, there were people on the trail, but they were taking their life in their hands theoretically, because at any moment on the edge of the trail where there was a little bit of snow, they could have encountered a snowmobile.
I mean, that issue and clarifying that issue, I guess, from a safety perspective, you know, and ensuring that there is signage there, if in fact there is either implied or documented exclusive use, that would seem to be priority number one from my perspective.
Yes, totally.
So, so shared use, in my opinion, is a bit of a problem. It's sort of an easy thing to call for, shared use, but practically speaking, when you've got a couple £1,000 motorized vehicle coming at you, the idea of shared use is not very practical. So in my mind, shared use is kind of a non-starter, although some of the internet discussion, some of the social media over the last couple of months has suggested that maybe shared use is an option, and I don't think it is really. There are parts, for example, Island Trails has a trail out in Brindalbin that uses a section of the Confederation Trail, and we have to post every year on our website to stay off that section of the hiking trail, because you're in danger of being run over, and that's not a good situation.
I think the other thing it's worth noting is that if, as Ramona said, the original agreement with the Snowmobile Association for the city parts of the trail was made in 1996, so much has changed in, you know, the suburban area of Charlottetown since 1996. Developments in West Royalty, developments in Winslow, the kind of infill between Winslow and West Royalty, and so that trail, which at that point may have been seen to be on, you know, the remotest part of Charlottetown and maybe not even in Charlottetown, I think now you have people in Winslow who deserve to be able to use the trail on, you know, in the same way that any other city resident would be able to.
Exactly, and this has not been a problem just in Charlottetown. As PEI grows, it's a problem in any built-up area. So you'll find that that, for example, Montague lobbied for and was given exclusive access to the section of the rail trail from Montague to Cardigan, which is 12 kilometers. Snowmobiles are not allowed on that section. The folks in Kensington have argued for access to one of their trails that goes on the Confederation Trail. And I haven't seen the details, but I've heard there's been some sort of compromise reached in that section. Probably the most commonly known exclusion for snowmobile use is in Summerside. The Confederation Trail runs right through the center of the city, but the mayor of Summerside has opted to close the gates for the winter, and snowmobiles are not allowed on the section through the center of Summerside. And Summerside has got permission from farmers in areas north of the city to have a groomed snowmobile trail up by Slemon Park, and that's what the snowmobiles use in the winter, rather than driving right through people's backyards. Because, as you know, the Confederation Trail in Summerside literally goes through a couple of subdivisions.
Are
So,
there infrastructural changes at the change of season? I'm thinking, for example, if you're walking on the trail north of the bypass and you get to Sherwood Road, there are gates there, and there are gates at other intersections. Are those gates removed for the snowmobile season?
they're left open.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So they open the gates. But let me debunk a couple of the positions the Snowmobile Association has taken on this issue. One is they have a signed agreement, and therefore they have exclusive access, and they kind of tout the economic benefits that go with the access, because they say they pay a lease agreement. The lease agreement stipulates they pay $1. So if they have other side agreements with the province, we're not aware of them. They also have to put up $5 million in liability insurance, and that becomes a huge risk for the province, because given the lack of safety record of snowmobile use in Canada, there's a very, very high chance every year that someone will be seriously injured or killed, and the province could be held liable for that. So I think that the Snowmobile Association gets quite a sweetheart deal from the province in terms of this access to 450 kilometers of trail in areas that are often very built up. And that doesn't make any sense, especially in seasons when there isn't very much snow. So in 2018, as an example, there wasn't enough snow on the Confederation Trail to have snowmobiles running, and yet they still had 3 months of unfettered access to the trail. So no one else could bike on it, no one else could walk on it, no one else could ski on it. One of the other things that the snowmobilers have said is that they do grooming on the trail, and you wouldn't be able to walk if it wasn't groomed. But we have, as I had mentioned before, some 50-odd trails that are marked for the winter use, and we don't have any of those trails groomed trails. What we do is we walk on them with snowshoes initially, and that makes a hard path, and then you can walk on them later. And some of the trails are actually used by bicycles as well, by fat bikes in the winter. So you don't need to do expensive grooming. I should also point out that last year there was an enormous amount of damage to Confederation Trail gates by their groomers, because the groomer drivers were not very careful. They caused an enormous amount of damage last year, which results in.
Did we lose
Hello?
Bryson?
To the government of PEI.
There he is.
Sure.
You there, Bryson?
I'm still here, yeah.
Okay, we lost you for a second.
Your audio became
Okay.
much better right now.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yeah, better.
Okay, good. I can hardly hear you, by the way.
Oh, don't move your head.
I have a couple questions I'd like to ask, but I'll wait till everybody's done there.
I'm good. You can go ahead, Ryan.
Okay, well, the first question I want to ask is, let's say I'm somebody from the city and I know nothing about the trail, and the fact that they're all, some of them I can go on and some of them I can't. Is there like a map that I can find that'll tell me you can go on these trails and the snowmobiles can't? And then there's ones where the snowmobiles, it's only snowmobiles and walkers or anyone can't go on them? Is there a map like that that the general public can access to find out which ones they can use and which ones they can't?
Well, the only trail that I'm aware of you can use is the Confederation Trail, unless it's actually built by the snowmobiles. So the
Okay.
50 trails that we have on our website, none of them are accessible by snowmobiles or ATVs.
Okay. Because to my knowledge, I thought like the whole trail, except from the city, like the Confederation Trail, it's all snowmobiles now, except from in the city. Is that correct?
That's right.
Okay. And another question I had, and regarding kind of the snowmobiles themselves, like, so, and you said that the maximum speed is 80 miles an hour that they can go on this trail. Is that correct?
So I'm going to have to plug you. I'm not hearing you well enough.
Oh, I said the trail, like the speed limit, like the maximum speed limit that they can go, like it just feels really dangerous if something was in the way or if somebody walked, even like it could be endangering animals. Like if an animal was walking by, like the person has to kind of run over the animal. That's just what I see with the snowmobiles. Just
Well,
like,
the speed limit is 80 kilometers an hour, but we shouldn't kid ourselves. The reason people are dying on the Confederation Trail driving snowmobiles is because they're going much, much faster than 80 kilometers an hour. If you look at where some of the crosses have been erected on the Confederation Trail, they're on turns, which are very gradual turns because they were designed for trains, on turns after long, long straight stretches. So you can imagine that there are people going 120, a good deal of the time on these on the Confederation Trail. It's very dangerous.
yeah.
I think to your point, Ryan, like the reason that this issue was originally drawn to my attention is I have a friend who wrote a blog post. He was new to the city after being away for a long time. He's a runner. He ran on the Confederation Trail all season long. He kept running on the Confederation Trail north of the bypass, not knowing that it was for snowmobile use. And then he encountered a snowmobile. And there was no signage, and so he had no way of knowing that he was trespassing, essentially. So,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a problem, and the problem is not just the lack of signage. The problem is, one of the things I've pointed out to the Premier just a few days ago is, from PEI's perspective, we're trying to deal with climate change. We're trying to encourage active transportation. We're putting a lot of money, $5 million a year, into active transportation. We get people encouraged to use their bicycles and to walk more, or snowshoe, whatever. And then we have, according to the Snowmobile Association, $200,000 worth of fuel a year being used just in grooming of the trails. I mean, it doesn't really make sense, especially in a time when the climate is warming. There's less and less opportunity to actually use the Confederation Trail as a snowmobile trail, and especially it's a problem in built-up areas as our population keeps growing.
Yeah.
Now I have a solution, a suggested solution anyway. So I'm not just coming along with doom and gloom. Ramona has a little map that I've drawn that shows the Confederation Trail in Charlottetown. And Ramona, can you pop that on the screen for us?
I can see that. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so you see the trail in red is on the left-hand side, Winslow South, and on the right-hand side, York. And the little bottom part of the T is the part that goes down to the bypass. So that's the Confederation Trail as it now exists. And you may notice that it's kind of U-shaped. And the shortest distance from the west to the east is not actually going down the Confederation Trail. It's going where that yellow line goes along the top. And it turns out that yellow line would be a very nice bypass for snowmobiles who want to go from west to east or east to west. It's all either farmers' fields or wooded areas with wood roads. And it seems to me that Charlottetown could adopt a solution that's very much like the Summerside solution, and that is reroute the snowmobiles north of the city in an area that is not occupied by roads or houses, and simply allows the snowmobiles to transit from one side of the province to the other. That's their main argument for using the Confederation Trail connector at this point.
Yeah, when I reached out to the Snowmobile Association last month, a couple of things that they mentioned supplementary to what you've already mentioned, Bryson, were that there were businesses, and I think they specifically mentioned Toymaster in Winslow, that exist as a service center, an important business to the snowmobile community. So I don't think this solution would take that out of contention, because you're still providing access through Winslow. And the other one was that they keep their groomers in Winslow because it's a central location. And again, I don't think that would be impacted by that either. And obviously you're not cutting off the east-west traversal. I think the one thing that would be affected is if there is a tradition of snowmobiles coming into city businesses for some other reason, restaurants, whatever else it is. I think there would be an argument against that from them.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. And I know Outriders is a favorite spot for them, which is right by the bypass. But at the same time, Outriders is not on the Confederation Trail, so they have to park in any case.
Yeah.
And one has to ask oneself, do Outriders depend on the snowmobile business, or if the snowmobiles weren't there, would other people step up and go to Outriders, or can the snowmobilers go to Outriders in their vehicles? I mean, the other thing that's important to remember is that most of the snowmobile use takes place after 11 o'clock at night and runs until the wee hours of the morning. So a lot of the use in rural areas, and the reason why the snowmobiles are less than popular in some of the rural areas, is because the snowmobiles are roaring by residential areas into the wee hours of the morning.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I would like to suggest, Mr. Chair, that perhaps to follow up from here, then, I think it would be useful for the task force to ask Ramona to come to the next meeting, if possible, with a copy or details of that 1996 agreement you talked about, Ramona, so we could understand the nature of that agreement for the use of the trail in the city, and then maybe make recommendations to the sustainability environment about how it might happen for 2022 if there is some flexibility there.
The other thing I'd like to offer before I go is there is a clause in the existing agreement with the Snowmobile Association that says that either party can abandon the agreement on 1 year's notice, and I would suggest that with a little bit of lobbying effort, that people who want to use active transportation in Charlottetown could easily put a little bit of pressure on the provincial government to say, you know what, this may not be something we want to be doing by 2026, and we should be working towards another kind of solution that doesn't involve the Snowmobile Association having exclusive access to a very, very worthwhile piece of real estate in an active transportation corridor close to a built-up area in PEI.
Because another thing you have to realize is population is increasing on Prince Edward Island drastically, and by 2026, there'll be a lot more people here than we even realize now. And having the snowmobilers with the right of way on that, there could be some dangerous collisions there that you might want. Having more awareness of this and prepared will benefit us in a couple of years down the road. Drastically.
Even that area between the bypass and Sherwood Road, in 1996, that would have been basically pure industrial and car dealerships, and now it's light industrial and offices, and so there's more pedestrian traffic there than there's ever been, and then on the Winslow side, there's more residential development than there's ever been. So
That's a really good point. And to your point, it's been a very mild winter. And a week ago Sunday, it reminded me of the pathways in New York City through Central Park, the number of people that were out walking on the Confederation Trail because the weather was so good. And the previous Wednesday before that, when it was +9 degrees, again, people were out walking on the Confederation Trail. So we as a city are limiting the amount of people on the trail from the bypass highway in, which is fine. But to your point, Peter, there's more residential people and people want more access to the trail. So it certainly is worthwhile to pursue.
Well, and although certainly our interests in active transportation and the interests of Bryson and Island Trails overlap significantly, we're primarily interested in what we've always talked about as purposeful trips. And so, not to say that recreation doesn't have a purpose, but I think what we're starting to see the possibility of now, and in some cases the reality of now, is people who live in Winslow who cycle into Charlottetown for work and who can only do that in the summer months. And with the advent of fat bikes and the possibility of plowing the trail as we do inside the city in the winter, then that becomes the possibility exists to extend that active transportation corridor all the way to the city limits. So, well, thank you, Bryson.
You're very welcome. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Ryan, Joanne, everyone, Ramona.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. I'll get that agreement. I'll talk to Nancy and see if she can share that agreement with us so we can review that as a committee.
Okay, thank you.
I'll send you, Ramona, as well, a copy of the snowmobile agreement with the province.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Okay. Next, moving on to reporting the department liaison.
Excuse me, Ryan. I had asked for a change in the agenda, which was retyped and sent out for number 6, an update on the Winter Cycling Congress. So I'm going to give that presentation now.
Sure, go right ahead. Let's do it.
But I need Carrie. Carrie, are you there? Oh, there she is. Okay, Carrie, take it away.
I'm here. I have instructions. Hang on. I'm going to ask some questions. So, Joanne, what made you decide to attend the E-Global Winter Cycling Congress?
Well, Peter had nominated me, and Ramona made it happen that I could represent you at the annual E-Global Winter Cycling Congress. And the hosts this year were in Delft, Netherlands. So at first my husband saw it on the email and he thought maybe we were going to get to go. But we went globally, or virtually. So it was very, very interesting and worthwhile.
What were your favorite live video winter bicycle tours?
All right. At the beginning of the conference on Thursday morning, a gentleman by the name of Pekka gave us a cycle tour of Oulu, Finland. And obviously he must have had his GoPro because I felt like I was on the back of his bike. Oulu, Finland has a population of 199,526. So I'll give you some more insights into that later in my presentation. On Friday morning, Glenn gave us a cycle tour of Edmonton, which is known as the City of Bridges. We drove along the River Road on his bicycle, and we went across a pathway on the high-level bridge. The population of Edmonton is 981,280. I've never been to Edmonton, but it's definitely on my list of places to go and to cycle.
What was Pechakucha? Did I say that
That's right. That's right. You did. Pechakucha, I had to look it up. It's a format of presentation where the presenter shows 20 chosen slides and they speak for 20 seconds. The actual Pechakucha means the sound of conversation in Japanese. And it's a format that they used a couple of times in the 4 hours of Thursday and 4 hours of Friday that I sat in front of this iPad taking in the conference. One of the most interesting ones was I was in Montreal, and the presenter showed us pictures of the Jacques Cartier Bridge, and it has an automatic counter to count how many people go across the bridge on their bicycles. I wonder if we could have that on the Hillsborough Bridge. So there's food for thought.
I like that idea. Who is the parliamentary secretary to Canada's Minister of Infrastructure and Communities, and what 3 funding programs did he tell you about?
All right. This is why I stepped up to do the minutes tonight, folks. Listen carefully. I was absolutely delighted to meet Andy Fillmore. Andy Fillmore happens to be the MP for Halifax, but he's also the parliamentary secretary to the Minister of Infrastructure and Communities. And he told us about 3 funding programs. The first one, Canada Healthy Communities Initiative from Infrastructure Canada, was announced on February 8th of this year. This grant is providing up to $31 million in existing federal funding to support communities as they deploy new ways to adapt spaces and services to respond to immediate and ongoing needs arising from COVID-19 over the next 2 years. In other words, he talked about initiatives for active transportation. Andy Fillmore said, COVID crisis has heightened our awareness of allocation of public space for active transportation. And he said, we're moving into practical planning. We want to make communities healthy and stronger and safer. So the Canada Healthy Communities grant that I'm talking about can be anywhere from $5,000 to $50,000. Now, the second program he told us about was on February the 10th of 2021 this year. Prime Minister Trudeau announced plans for the federal government to spend an additional $14.9 billion over the next 8 years on public transportation. Mike Cassidy, take a shout out for that one. The rest, and these projects are going to go across Canada. The rest is to go towards the creation of a permanent transit fund of $3 billion per year starting in 2026. Now, the third one, Andy Fillmore didn't give us any details, but he said within the next month, the government will be announcing a national engagement program, making communities more resilient. So I found this fascinating. Andy Fillmore is a planner and designer and engineer and designer by profession. He's gone to Acadia tons and all this, but he's living in Halifax. And I know Peter's been to Halifax, myself, the mayor, different people on the task force. And we're pretty impressed with how fast things are moving there in terms of bike lanes, shared lanes, protected bike lanes. And I think with people like Andy Fillmore in your city and in our government, we're going to see a lot of changes in the future. And maybe Charlottetown can model off of that. Okay, Carrie.
According to Peter Newman from Perth, Australia, how do we make cities more transit and more bicycle friendly?
All righty. Peter Newman was the featured guest speaker. And when he talked about making cities more transit and more bicycle friendly, he said, traditionally, the old cities were walking cities. They realize today people commute half an hour by car in each direction to work. And he said, we need more transit. Walking and cycling must be a priority in a city. So he showed us a slide and he talked about, write this down, I'll put it in the minutes, the Trackless Tram. Now it's green in color and it came from China. Transit is as good as rail, but on the roads. It's train-like, but it's very cost efficient. So this gentleman's down in Australia telling us about a cutting edge type of transit called the Trackless Tram. So you might want to Google that sometime. He said smart city transit and cycling. Cycling post-COVID is taking off. And to get funding, you've got to get to a net zero. He said the clustering of ideas and talent is way more powerful than any disease. You have to be innovative. He said renewables have won, solar and wind. Even in the United States, coal is going down and renewables are going up. The range of trucks that can use electricity is better. Transit and buses will go electric. Micromobility, scooters, electric bikes. In Africa, they're even using electric freight bikes. And so that was some of his presentation. What I'm giving you here today are things that I was interested in or that I felt that I could bring back to you. Carry on, number 6.
Like I said earlier, I'm multitasking a bit. Number 6. What was the ride-along phone line in the Netherlands?
Okay. The ride-along phone line, in other words, riding in darkness and access by design. What you have to understand, folks, is over in the Netherlands in that area, they really don't have as much snow as, say, Edmonton or Montreal or Norway. But it gets very dark in November. And this becomes a gender problem, okay? How can we solve the social problem of women cycling at night? So what they found in this particular city in the Netherlands was women were being attacked and, pretty much. And so Esther from the Dutch Cycling Association came up with the idea of, in the middle of their city, to create an awareness and to help women cyclists, they put up like a booth, almost like a Snoopy Lucy booth, only she had pedals and phones. So if a woman had to go to a particular route in the city, she would come and sign up and they would get in the same station, I guess, and they would talk on the phone. So Base would run her bicycle with her feet and talk to the cyclist till she got to her safe destination. So they called that program Cycling Along by Phone, but it was to create an awareness and to give women some safety. So the co-cycling booth, social designers. So there's some things I want to share with you here. In Netherlands, there's well-lit bicycle paths, but there are scary roads which are dark. So this was a scary road. But the problem is possible victims shouldn't have to change their behavior. And when they set up this ride-along phone line, cyclists felt more protected while cycling. So we have to create gender awareness bicycle planning. And what is the aim of bicycle planning? Is it, number 1, commuting, or is it getting children to school? So you've got to create gender awareness. Important thing that women consider, or other people, route choice. Choose streets where there's public surveillance, such as those eyes on the street, sufficient street lighting, and removal of bushes. So that's something I'm going to put in Business Arising for the next meeting, because, you know, you picture a potential aggravator coming out through those bushes that ride along the Confederation Trail. This popped up a couple times, but this was really drove home to me. So what else can we do to fix this? Women should not be harassed or attacked at night. Women's diverse needs should be valued and taken into account. Now, they talked about the width of a bike path and women's safety, gender aware bicycle planning. So that's got to be, Peter, last year you talked about what are criteria for planning. Well, that's number one in my books. So that was a really good takeaway.
Yeah, that's a really interesting perspective to consider that we don't always think about first. What was the program Wheels for Wellbeing in Wales?
All right. Isabel Clement is a hand cyclist. So she was an advocate for inclusive cycling for people with disabilities. She sits on her bike and she has hand cranks which cycle. So it's like a tricycle and it's fairly wide. And because she's fairly low, and again, it gets dark, she has a helmet light, she has a high visible, she has a front light, she has lights on her backpack, she has spoke reflectors and spoke lights. Other people that have crank bikes use reflective gloves. Her biggest concern, potholes. Streets have to be well maintained. Planners need to think of children, disabled people. Think about the people who are not on the cycling paths and think, how do you give them access? Lastly, plan for wider cycles and non-standard cycles. So again, the bushes. Do we need those overhanging bushes in the city on the Confederation Trail between Allen Street and Belvedere Avenue? I think not. So, like I said, that's going in the minutes. Folks, we just have 3 more questions here. Please hang in.
What was the winter maintenance program in Montreal?
Okay, I don't know if anybody saw it, but I sent you out an email right before this started. It came to me, and it had to do with this winter cycling congress, and it showed a poster beside a maintenance person. But I'm going to back up here a bit and tell you a little bit about winter maintenance superclass, making things safe for cycling in the winter. Okay, as we know, Montreal has a population of 1.78 million people, way bigger than us. Montreal has worked hard on their winter-ready cycling infrastructure and their maintenance. And they approach it with, what are the cyclist needs? Well, you need a hard, even surface, free of loose snow and free of bare ice. So what are the operations when there's snow and in the winter? Number 1, salting. Number 2, gritting. Number 3, snow clearing. Number 4, snow removal. All those need to be performed frequently in the winter. Snow removal is the most expensive because, same as Charlottetown, you have to get it up in a truck and you get it out of the center of the city. So when you're designing bike lanes, you ask yourself, does it fit? And will new equipment be needed? Now, guidance. The snow removal operator needs to a guide to find the bike lanes. So actually, the snow operators, the snowplow operators, prefer a curb or an edge. I was quite surprised by this. You know, the bollards can be there, which they may hit or they may not, but they like the guideline of having a curb or an edge. However, what they've done lately is they've beveled the edge of the curb to help prevent breakage of equipment. Now, remember a couple of years ago, we had all those big dumps of snow, and the snow and the sidewalks didn't get cleared very well around the city, particularly on North River Road. And they said the equipment kept breaking. But anyway, this is what they do in Montreal. They bevel they round out, or they bevel the curbs, and they have less breakage. Parked cars are a nuisance. They prevent snow being removed. If possible, snow can be stored on the street to melt, but meltwater can cause water washing across the bike lanes and then can cause freezing. So you're best to try to have snow drain to the center of a street. What impedes snow removal? They said those planted medians are hard and get in the way of snow removal. Now, a bike lane attached to the sidewalk allows for one plow to do both, so they've gone with that. But it is difficult for a visually impaired person to find the edge of the sidewalk when you have that. Design bike lanes for the summer, but great to optimize in the winter. So the poster I sent out to you, let me see, where did I put it? Showed how Montreal wanted to motivate their maintenance crew, and they put a poster in the break room to show how much the bicycle usage had gone up in the year, and in the winter, since the snow removal crew had come on and were clearing the bike paths, how much in so many years that the usage of bike had gone on. So they put that poster right in their room, and they one of the snow plow drivers or whatever, he was also a cyclist. So that kind of whole idea took right off, and it was quite a motivator. And later on, after a few years, they put a new poster in city council chambers and in the designers, and that poster was more reflective of the bike counting, this sort of thing. So they felt by giving people information and educating them on why they're doing it, it makes a difference. Okay, Carrie.
Why do details matter in Oulu, Finland? Oulu?
Yes, a few times I got to go virtually to Oulu, Finland. And I'm saying Finland. I think, yeah, okay, it was in Finland. I actually, like I said, I had a bike tour that in one morning. And then later on, Harry came back and told us why details matter. Population of Oulu, Finland, 199,526. Much bigger than Halifax. Halifax has the whole HRM, I looked it up, is around 400,000 now. But that's all the way out to Bedford and Hubbards and includes Dartmouth, that sort of thing. So this was considered a smaller city. But Oulu has a superclass network, and it maintains 6 contractors, maintain 125 kilometers of bike trails. And their starting threshold is 2 centimeters, and they allow a maximum of 4 centimeters of snow. The snow contractors ride the bike paths themselves, and they also, get this, they have events to collect feedback on how well they're doing, and they serve hot chocolate at little kiosks to the people that fill out their things. In other words, it was a contract, but the previous contractors Oulu found didn't do a good job. So when they hired this crew, they wanted to motivate them and make sure that details mattered. So what they figured out too is that sand and gravel and gritting, only put it down if necessary, but not sharp gravel, which might harm the tires. Winter maintenance is customer service. Gary, number 10.
How is active pathway snow removal in Edmonton different from the snow removal in Montreal?
Okay. Coming down. I just have one more question after this, guys. All right. Active. Okay. So I told you I had a tour of Edmonton, and then later on, snow removal was discussed there and how it was different. In Edmonton, they don't start removing snow from the bicycle lanes until the end of the snowfall. That was the biggest difference. They had designed their bike lanes to be clean within 24 hours and shared bike lanes cleared within 48 hours. Now, I can put this in the minutes too. They use a tool cat, which has a broom blade attachment. They use an MV holder sidewalk plow with a blade attachment, and they also apply brine. The challenges, number one, the impact on residents as they don't like the bike lanes being cleared after midnight. It's too noisy. Number two, overflow. Regular plows can plow snow back sometimes into the bike lane. So you've gone to all the work of cleaning the bike lane and sometimes it gets pushed back in. So they have to watch out for that, and they need to procure more narrow equipment if the lane was as skinny. Number three was the melt. There again, it melts during the day and it can freeze during the night. So that's a hazard on the bike lane. Number four, there is trouble with cars trying to drive down the bike lanes because the priority is to clear them. So that happens. So in Montreal, sidewalk plowing is in conjunction with bike lanes. Most communities have a separate snowplow team for bikeways to avoid crushed stone on bike lanes. In Edmonton, the same group of people do the sidewalks and the bike lanes. Salt brine is only used on bike lanes, not sidewalks. In other words, Jason, you would say this: when you build it, you've got to take care of it. That came out of Edmonton. All right, last one.
Last one. How did family cycling improve in Scotland after COVID-19?
All right. Well, I took this idea because I was thinking in terms of Bike Week. What a neat thing. This person's name, Josh Wood, was cycling in Scotland. And he told us we have to be concerned about pedaling for the future. So they have a national cycling organization, and they recognize that cycling is accessible and a practical activity. So what they came up with were little mini courses. They offered individual courses to families to increase their confidence. And each course was 2.5-hour session. So a family would sign up with a cyclist trainer. And this whole program came up this year in response to COVID. I say this year, I mean 2020. For one family, they had one instructor. And the takeaway was, do you want an everyday adventure? Build your confidence. Good way to reach adults for training. And it was offered from June to September. So there's another idea for Charlottetown. Guys, I had 18 pages of notes after my 2-day conference, but thank you for being patient, and thank you, Carrie, for asking the questions.
Great job. It was a great presentation.
Joanne, can I ask a supplementary question?
Sure.
I'm just interested in, I mean, thank you for the trees. I'm interested also in your impression of the forest, and just relative to what you as a cyclist experience in Charlottetown as opportunities for year-round cycling versus what you saw others being able to experience, through the eyes of the conference. Can you see Charlottetown being like Edmonton, like Montreal, like Oulu? Can you draw a parallel between the two situations?
I think we have to work on our protected bike lanes first, because predominantly those are very large cities, and I've cycled in different cities in Europe, and they bring you in the outskirts of the city, and you may park your bike and then walk into town, that sort of thing. These places, again, they were showing us the protected bike lanes, like say along Water Street, if we had a protected bike lane into the city, and then you'd walk uptown. So the potential is there. Confederation Trail, I certainly have seen people bicycling December and January this year. I've seen people uptown with fat bike, one person, and there are commuters in Charlottetown. A friend of mine was telling me there's two that come down a certain street and, into town regularly. So the potential is there. But we need to work on our bike lanes.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. I guess we're now moving to reporting from department liaisons. First one is Public Works.
I have a question. So every day when I go to work, I drive out past our beautiful new trail that was put out along the bypass, and it's not plowed. It infuriates me beyond all comprehension. And who do we contact about that, Ramona? I don't understand why this trail was put in and it's not being plowed.
It's not done, Jason. So there's like one section of it. So we agreed, and I think we talked about this at a previous meeting, that it's technically not open. So it's not being plowed this season. Like the only section, like there's sections, we don't really want anybody on it. Like the curbing hasn't been completed. The guardrail's not up. There's like a section of it that has been graded, but not paved. So that's not opening until next year.
There has been a section like by the KFC from that down to Kensington Road. I don't know.
Oh yeah, that is the province's section that they built. So that piece is done, but because it's part of the overall project, we've kind of considered that, I guess, that we wouldn't be maintaining that this winter. And we honestly, in fairness, we also have to figure out how if we're gonna even be able to do that. One thing we've talked about is perhaps doing that as a 3-season trail, because we just don't have the capacity or the equipment right now to plow it, and we don't want to set up sort of expectation that it'll be clear all winter when we may not be able to do that.
Like that trail, it's such a great idea, and if there's no plowing of that trail, that falls so hard on what needs to get done. Like it's almost counterintuitive. Like, are you saying permanently this is going to be like, because there's nothing to plow that right now? Like next winter when it's finished, they're not going to plow that? We don't
right now. This winter, we do not have any capacity to be able to clear that trail. That's what we're meeting on it regularly. We're lobbying council for more equipment, for more people, for more money. But at this point, I can't say to you confidently that it'll get plowed next winter. I don't know that yet.
That's just crazy to me. And I'm not saying that to you. I'm just saying the whole prospect of that trail not being open during the winter, that just is like.
And it's really discouraging. Like the Hillsborough Bridge, same thing. Like the province built it, it's wonderful, but they are saying to Cornwall and sort of to Stratford and Charlottetown, we're not maintaining it, we're not clearing it, we're not giving you money to clear it, we're not giving you equipment to clear it, we're not including that in our funding. It's like that part is really, really just kind of not part of the discussion as much as we bring that up about maintenance. And hearing Joanne's talk, it's just like, I get all of that, and I can see all the challenge. I would love to even be at the point where we had challenges with what type of gravel to put down. That's like 5 steps, 10 steps, 20 steps, kind of from where we're at right now.
Like I know.
Ramona, sorry.
No, I was just gonna say.
Is there currently I'm not sure, so I'm going to ask. Is there a list like of priority trails, that we could find out, or is that anything that's even out there right now?
No, I think Peter had asked that at a previous meeting, like not about priority trails. Do you mean for snow clearing or?
Or sorry, primary, like, so, say the trail from UPEI is going to be looked after like during the winter, all the way down to, Joe Giz Park, so that people know that trail is looked after, where perhaps the one Jason's speaking about, it's just listed. Like, this is our primary trails, they're red. This is how quickly we get them done, that type of thing. Is there anything like that someone just anywhere could look on and find out?
Probably not, Margaret. Like I'll tell you, the Confederation Trail Parks and Rec does that from Mount Edward Road to Joe Giz Park, and they're quite good to keep on top of that. Same, they Parks and Rec also does the boardwalk, and it's cleared as much as possible. But I don't think there's a map like what you're mentioning.
Okay.
Ramona, if we, this is the kind of thing that I could take back to Bike Friendly to lobby the right people with. It definitely falls under something we want to see happen. So we should target the province first, or both the city and province, or is there anyone specific we should talk to first?
I think it's both pieces. Like to me, I understand the province not covering labor in their funding program, but I don't understand why they wouldn't cover snow clearing equipment that was dedicated for trails. I think that's an essential piece of the AT fund. So I think on the active transportation fund, like I bring this up regularly, but more people bringing it up, the better, I think, is that those should be considered eligible expenses under that program. And then on the city side, I don't honestly think if we had a piece of equipment, I don't think labor would be as much as a limiting factor, but I do think that both sides need to hear it probably.
Yeah, I think it needs to be like out there in the public. I think if the public knew about this, it would be something that people, I mean, it's ludicrous, to think that we're building trails and there's nobody looking after them. Like for as much as people want to, they say people are, they're on the Confederation Trail and they're biking in the winter, but well, what happens when the city is expanding at an exponential rate here. It doesn't just stop at the bypass. It goes like, Ryan, you know that better than anybody, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it just doesn't end at the bypass. And, I was so excited to see this trail going in around the bypass and to hear that it's, being taken care of in the winter. To me, it's just like it's like the bike lanes in the city in the wintertime that are not Federation Trail. It's just there's no thought to them. There's nothing, and it's maddening to say the least.
Or can we, as a group, as an organization, as a committee, can we not, ask that there be, primary trails like that? You can guarantee the general population that those trails are going to be open at a certain time, for snow removal. And I understand we could say the boardwalk is one, and from UPEI to Joe Giz, but there has to be other routes that people want to use and want to take. Is that an option, Ramona?
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be good to have that clearly communicated, which are priority trails and which will be cleared for sure at a more as a more focused. Yeah, I do think that would be good.
I think it's not only, I mean, snow clearing, I'm 100% in agreement with you, Jason. I think the other issue, which I think is going to come to pass, not immediately, but not too far in the distant future, is the maintenance, when you get potholes on those AT trails. And, we see that on the section that goes from Park Street out to Murchison. That was built by the province, has never been maintained, has potholes, has places where water gathers, all those sorts of things. So we need to provide for that as well.
Yeah.
I agree. I just think if the public, I know, Carrie, if you're speaking to Mitch, I know he wants trails and he has a lot of great ideas, but if he could put some of that energy towards somehow working in a model of, permanent funding for removal, that can be, like a cornerstone kind of thing, like a pillar, I think it's so important. And the thing is too, if people are serious about getting people to use active transportation, I think the idea that it's a 2-season or even a 3-season thing, I think it kills momentum. I think it's just one of those things where it makes people think about it. Well, it's winter now, and I think there are some areas in town that you can't. But I think there's a good percentage of stuff you could keep open for people to use.
I agree with you, Jason. Like if you think about if I live in Hillsborough Village and I work at the QEH, all of a sudden I can walk to work now for the first time, except when there's snow, which
Yeah.
that's just, that doesn't, I would suggest that maybe we build into the template, when we're talking about, we're going to build this new AT trail, the check boxes should be, okay, is this going to be 3-season or 4-season? And that should be part of the discussion. And if we check the 4-season box, then we have to not only go and, make representation of the capital budget, we also have to make representation of the operating budget too.
Absolutely.
I wonder if some of these new funding that Joanne was mentioning could potentially be accessed for just a thought.
You should ask your friend Andy, Joanne.
Yeah, I'll send him an email. I'll let you know by next meeting when I get back.
Because I think Ramona, that comment that you made, like if we could get the equipment, then we could figure out the labor. That makes it appear more doable to me. I mean, it's still a challenge to get the equipment, but.
So no, that was my only comment. I just been noticing trails and stuff, and it's winter, so.
Do we have any other comments regarding public work? No.
Nope.
Okay. Okay. Public works is done here, and moving on. Parks and Recreation.
I have nothing to report, but I do have a question, Ramona, that I wonder if you're talking to Nancy, you could ask, because it came up over the summer and I didn't ask the question then. I remember when we had our cycle tour with the mayor and with Mitch and with David Sims through Victoria Park, the mayor was mentioning, the boardwalk, for example, is not considered an AT trail. It's considered a pedestrian trail. And the way he said that kind of made it sound like that was like an inviolable rule, like that we could never change. And I wondered where is that rule written, and is it actually something that we could, maybe not for the entire boardwalk, but are there sections of the boardwalk that we could re-examine to see whether they could be multi-use?
I'm not sure. It's never really come up. I think more of the discussion that's kind of going on right now is retaining the Victoria Park bike lane as an active transportation way, like they did this year for COVID.
Yeah.
And then there's been talk of a redesign of the whole causeway, which would have the boardwalk, but it would also have dedicated biking infrastructure. There's been a couple different discussions, but I haven't really heard a discussion of would we allow bikes on the boardwalk.
The section I'm thinking about in particular is from Friendly Pharmacy, basically to Receiver Coffee, for lack of a better description.
Yeah. That's a tricky one, Peter. And I agree. Like I bike that piece, and then all of a sudden everything's there, and it's not busy enough on that section. Like I have been known to ride my bike on that section.
Yeah. And it's also, that's only going to get, if I'm thinking, how would I get from my house to the new Hillsborough Bridge Trail? That's a logical way for me to do it, especially as the connection in with the event grounds improves. And so, that would be I'm not suggesting that we should have a multi-use trail around Peaks Key, for example. I don't think it would support that, but.
Yeah, no, I will mention that specific section. I'll ask Nancy about it and see if that's ever something that's come up.
And the other thing that comes to rise or comes to mind as a result of that is when you get to, there's a pedestrian crossing at the other side of the Friendly Pharmacy that takes you over the Maritime Electric side of Water Street, and then there's kind of a trail that goes parallel to the event grounds that leads up past the Acorn statue and then joins up with the new Hillsborough Bridge Trail. I'd be interested to know whose trail that is, if it's anyone's.
That's ours. And that
Okay.
one, so when we've been talking with the province about, like, one of the applications we put into the AT fund is the connections once you get off the
Right.
Hillsborough Bridge. So right now we're focusing on the Grafton Street application. So that would take you, if you're going straight down Grafton Street to downtown. But we did include in that some like trail improvements for the like it would probably still be gravel. We may not be able to upgrade to asphalt this year, but there's a couple sections where it's a little mucky, and so we were going to do some improvements on that.
And I guess that's up for wholesale renovation when the Eastern Gateway thing comes up, and probably
exactly when we do that intersection, we would do a larger upgrade there.
Yeah. Okay.
Ramona, you mentioned something about causeway. What do you consider where do you mean for that? It was in the part it was in the beginning of the conversation around the bike lane and
right. The whole, I guess I mean from the end of Brighton Road to where it comes out on Terry Fox Drive, like by
okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Cool. Okay. I just didn't know what you meant by like what that reference was. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. And do we have a report for police?
Hi, nothing to report from police.
Okay. And how about sustainability?
I think I used up all my time tonight. Ramona, do you have anything else?
Nothing else to add. I haven't heard back from the AT fund on our applications yet, so we're awaiting word on that. And I will say, Joanne, I am aware of the Healthy Communities Fund and waiting more details on the Public Transit Fund. And it sounds like whatever Andy's saying is coming soon. I'll be interested in that one too.
Joanne, I took particular interest in the point that you made about the Scottish, I think it was the Scottish cycle coaches. I think that's a really interesting idea because I think we have focused kind of on bicycle maintenance as a thing before, but it sounds like what you're talking about is larger than bicycle maintenance. It's about confidence and it's about finding solutions, and it could involve, I need to go from point A to point B with my family. What's the safest way? All those sorts of things. I think that would be an interesting bike week kind of, or even summer long kind of thing.
Sure. And yep, exactly. That's why I kind of made a point of that, but that would be a good offering. Thank you for.
Yeah, I jotted that one down too, Joanne. I thought that was a great one because even when we do the bike rodeos, and that's great for kids. But I thought it was interesting how you said that it was a good way to target adults. So like as a family, you can you're almost doing it for the kids, but then the adults benefit also. I like the idea of them, and then looking at how can we do purposeful trips as a family.
Yeah. Even if we focus, I can see us doing that in a very targeted way, which is like, okay, in 2021, we're going to help people get their groceries using active transportation. And, so if you want to get your groceries by bicycle, here's our grocery cycling coach who's going to show you how to get a trail, how to get a saddle bag, or, where else you need, show you the safe routes to get there. That would be interesting.
I nominate you, Peter, for that.
Okay, I'll be by, Margaret, to help you get your groceries.
I was very interested in hearing about the safety, and I think that for anyone, any of us, we just have that need to be safe. And through the trails and the initiatives, some of those initiatives that they're taking that you spoke of, Joanne, I thought was very informative and just applicable to all, to all people that are cycling, as opposed to stay off on the side of the road and do this and do that and use your signals. But it's actually getting on a trail when it is dark at night and ensuring that someone's not going to jump out of the ditch after you, when you're and they're down there. I just think that there's so much to be said for safety of your own person and for the city actually supporting everyone so that we can, do AT and do it really well in a safe way that's applicable for all, you know, whether we're a child or we're whatever we are. I just really have a great interest in those simple things being sort of addressed, where, you know, we all grew up where we had the big ditches in all the neighborhoods, and, you know, now that's all gone due to several different things happening for little folks, you know, in ditches and that type of thing. So filling them in seems to be something that's probably pretty time consuming, but it seems to be something that I would have great interest in for someone my age to cycle at night on the trail. You know, if that, I could see myself like going to a movie, getting back on the trail and cycling back home. But I wouldn't do it now. With the ditches the way that they are. I just wouldn't do it.
Yeah, you know, I just on the issue of safety, one of the things I realized, my son and I walked over the Hillsborough Bridge and walked all the way to Sobeys on the other side. And I realized once the Hillsborough Bridge Trail is finished, the safest way for us to go to a Sobeys is not going to be to ride up Prince Street to the Sobeys at Allen. It's going to be to go over to Stratford, because there's AT Trail all the way. So.
Yeah, I was just went up the road, the bridge, and I was kind of shocked by the roads there. That the trail there is going to be very interesting. I'm looking forward to checking it out. Yeah. And next, I believe it's Carrie cycling PEI.
Well, I'm BSC. I don't.
Okay. Oh.
I don't have an update on cycling PEI.
Yeah, nothing from cycling.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Bike friendly style town. My bad.
I also don't have an update currently, but I suspect I may next month. So things are happening. So I'll have more to share soon. And I'm going to take this back to them about the snow removal for sure, because it's definitely something we can work on from our end.
And lastly, new business. Is there any new business anyone wants to discuss? I know me personally, I just want to know about sidewalk snow removal. Like, I know myself personally, when the winter comes, I'm kind of hibernating because I don't go very much on the sidewalks anymore. But I'm just like wondering how the city's doing with like fast sidewalk clearing. Is there anything any information on that, or just fast sidewalk clearing, and how is the city doing with sidewalk clearing this year?
I think once again, Ryan, it's a good question, and I would love to see a list of what sidewalks are plowed first, so that people know where they can go and they can trust that they can get out and go on that sidewalk. That I just think I've looked at other places and it seems like that's there, and it tells you the hours that it's hoped to be done within and that type of thing. I just think for many different reasons, it would be helpful to know which sidewalks are cleared. I live in a residential area. Mine's always cleared. So it's like, it's just done very quickly. So it just kind of, I just would love to have that information too, Ryan. Great question.
Yeah.
I wonder, Mr. Chair, if it might be appropriate, given both what Jason was talking about the future of the new trails and what you're referring to now, whether we could ask the manager of Public Works to come to our next meeting and just kind of give us a cook's tour of winter snow clearing with focus on sidewalks.
I think that's a good idea to learn and we can use it as a way we're inquiring just about how it's done and
yeah,
what the deal is. I think that's a great idea.
Could you make that ask, Ramona?
Yep, just making a note of that. I'll see if Scott's available for our next meeting.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Because I think it would be, you know, if we are thinking about those new trails, it would be good for us to have a shared understanding of here's how much a sidewalk plow costs, and here's how much it costs to run it and maintain it, and you know, just to understand kind of what the snow clearing on a AT trail per kilometer cost is every year would be useful.
Regarding the AT trails as well, I think for the winter, it might be a good thing to like have a list of like, or maybe it's not a list, like a statistic of how many people would actually use it like in the winter, because if there's only like 10 people that use it, but I understand, it just might be interesting to know the demand of it as well during the winter time. But if it was open more, the demand would increase. But just curious in my opinion.
Well, to take a page from Joanne's report, you know, maybe we need hot chocolate kiosks at major intersections where we just have someone who stops and talks to people about if this was plowed, would you walk to the hospital on it, or you know, whatever.
Yeah.
And I have other programs, Ryan, that I didn't share tonight that they've used in some of these big cities to get more people riding bikes, you know, in the winter, this sort of thing, and the school children as well. Yeah, yeah. And hot chocolate was, I think, on everyone's list, Peter.
And with that again, what about like disability and like people in wheelchairs? Was there much on that? You mentioned hand cycles, but just like the average person in a wheelchair, was there anything like that mentioned?
No, that one lady that I told you about that used the crank cycle equipment, her concern was that it was wide, and therefore the trails need to be wider and the shrubs need to be moved out and cut way back for somebody that's riding like a 3-wheel cycle, for instance. I'm just trying to think back on that. That's the one that I drew because I was concerned about the bushes on the Confederation Trail. Yeah, not a whole lot. A lot of it, the focus was winter cycling and showing us what a success it had been in different cities and the different campaigns. In a number of cities, they had the mayor come cycle with the school children, you know, or a politician to come out and get people cycling. And, you know, we've got a real advantage here having our Confederation Trail lit year round, from in town all the way out to, I think it's past the mall. It's foresight in doing that is fantastic. We're very, very fortunate, but we have work to do. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Any other new business?
No.
Okay, well, I believe that's the adjournment of let's adjourn the meeting then.
Great.
Okay, and so see you all next meeting.
Thank you for your minute taking, Joanne.
Thank you. I'll put it together in the next week or two.
Okay.
Thanks,
Good night.
everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Night.